Sterling K. Brown is nominated for Emmys number 8 and 9 this year. He earned his 5th consecutive nomination for Outstanding Lead Actor in a Drama Series for playing Randall Pearson on NBC's This Is Us, and another one for Outstanding Narrator on CNN's Lincoln, Divided We Stand. Sterling, first off, huge congratulations. 2 more Emmy nominations. They love you over there. And how did you celebrate that news, and how did you hear about both nominations?
First of all, thank you very much. Then it never gets old. I have people ask me like, "Oh, you must be used to this by now, right?" And I'm like, "No, like not even close. I'm still like a kid in a candy store." I believe my publicist Michael Geiser hit me with a text saying, "Hey man, you got nominated twice," and I was like, "Twice?" He's like, "Yeah, for narrator." I was like, "Oh my god, this is crazy." I think I was busy getting my kids ready either to go to camp or to go to football practice or tennis practice or capoeira or whatever they were doing. And it was cool. My wife was out of town. She's shooting a pilot right now, or she was shooting a pilot for NBC. And so I didn't have her to celebrate with, but I did have my 2 boys, which is always absolutely lovely because they know nothing about this business. They know a little bit, like they know enough to be annoyed by the business, but they also know enough to be like, "Congratulations, Daddy." So it was a good morning.
And This Is Us being nominated for Outstanding Drama Series is a huge win because it's the only series representing a major television network. How important is that series nomination?
I think it's pretty big, man. I know talking to Dan last year, he was a little sad by not being there last year. And it's always more fun to celebrate when you get a chance to celebrate the collective rather than just the individual success. The only sad part about this year is that it's limited in terms of who can show up due to COVID, et cetera, et cetera. But like, I love this show. And I mean, I don't want it to sound overly saccharine or like, yeah, everybody loves this show. But for the past 5 years, this journey, this character with these people has been a dream come true. I mean, logistically speaking, I get to shoot in Los Angeles with my family, be close to home. Financially speaking, I get a nice little chunk of change, not even gonna lie. But artistically speaking, man, to go on the journey of Randall Pearson, this transracial adoptee who is constantly in search of trying to find a place where he belongs, where he feels as if he fits like hand in glove. And then the risks that the show took this year, Dan and our producers and writers, in terms of dealing with the social unrest that was going on with Black Lives Matter, incorporating COVID in a way that hopefully didn't take you out of the story that we've been telling for the past 4 years, but only enhanced what everyone was going on in the world today. I have never been more proud to be a part of a piece of art.
And the episode 40 part 2 was submitted to Emmy voters this year for your performance. And in that, we see Randall grappling with his anxiety. It's the 40th birthday of the triplets. And there's this tension that he's feeling with, both of his siblings, mostly Kevin, but there's a lot of angst about his history and identity. Yeah. What were your thoughts when you were reading that storyline, and what were you hoping viewers would take away from that?
So I read it. Everybody was on quarantine. We were trying to figure out what are the protocols that are going to be necessary for us to get back to work. So in real time, Sterling and the rest of the world, you see Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, and you're like, oh man, I thought in the midst of this pandemic that was transpiring, maybe racism could take a break. But hindsight has showed us that was not the case. And to have a forum, an artistic forum, to sort of express what I was feeling through this character was a really interesting thing, because I would have castmates, other friends from undergrad, from grad school, call and be like, hey man, let us know what we can do to help, or how can I be of service, or like, what should I be doing right now to be a better ally? And while the best of intentions were behind these people, it's like, I'm trying to figure out this shit for myself, man. You know what I'm saying? So I was like, I'd appreciate it. I appreciate where you're coming from, but like, I actually just have to focus here to figure out how to endure this for myself. So it was a really interesting thing because it was, I think to date, and Dan might agree with this, that I don't think we got more chatter on the interwebs in terms of social media than after that episode, because there were a lot of people who were like, if I wanted to watch Black Lives Matter and COVID, I'd watch the news. I watch your show to escape. But I think there was a more vocal majority that said, thank you. Like, thank you for showing what's been going on in the world and letting me know that I'm not crazy for feeling the way that I'm feeling right now. You know what I'm saying? And the folks who were able to recognize the nuance of like, difficult conversations can take place without people being antagonistic, right? I think so much of complicated conversations today in particular devolve into argumentation. And we had a chance to see conversations between a brother and a sister and a brother and a brother that love each other, that are in difficult situations, and they had to just articulate what was going on. And that doesn't mean I hate you. That doesn't mean I don't love you. It just means I kind of need to take care of myself in this particular moment.
And, you know, I love the interaction with you and Chrissy Metz in that scene. She, of course, plays Kate, but you nail what people are thinking. And both characters are so sympathetic that it's easy to watch that tense conversation because you really do care about both of the characters. What was it like filming that scene with Chrissy?
Chrissy Metz is one of my favorite people in the world. Like, honestly, Denton, like Justin and Chrissy, I don't even think of them as friends. I think of them as my brother and sister. Like, that's where we've gotten to at this particular point in time. And Chrissy comes in. Chrissy wears every emotion that she has, like on not just her sleeve, but like her wrist. Like, it's all just vibrating at the fingertips. And she's like, I'm nervous, bro. I'm nervous. I'm nervous. I'm like, I'm nervous too, but no, at the end of the day, I love you and you love me the same way that Randall loves Kate and Kate loves Randall. And I think that people will take that away, hopefully, when it's all said and done, regardless of how things are uncomfortable, right? It still needs to be said. And so, and we went through it a few different times, and there are times in which it was a little bit more bombastic. There's times in which it was a little bit more reserved. And then Ken Olin, our director of that episode, was able to find a nice middle ground where it was like, yes, like we are engaged, we are not angry, we are hurt on both sides, but this conversation, just because it's difficult, doesn't mean that it should not transpire. And I think that's probably one of the biggest theses of the season in that episode in particular. Just because it's difficult doesn't mean it shouldn't happen.
And I want to just mention the brotherly love episode as well, because I thought that was just another great one this season of with you and Justin Hartley just going back and forth. It hit viewers right in the gut. So about sort of these microaggressions in some way and the deep rooted tension that can sort of grow between brothers their whole lives. Can you talk about what it was like filming that episode? Just another uncomfortable topic that is navigated so elegantly.
Thank you. Man, they can write. Like, honestly, like the dude from the first time that I read the pilot, I was like, this dude Fogelman, you know, he's got something. He's got a spark. Justin and I were really looking forward to this episode because you have to think about this season. Due to COVID protocols, we had to shoot things in such a way where we didn't have a lot of extras. We weren't sort of crossing the globe the way that we typically do. Like, this was the first season in which we haven't gone somewhere, whether it's Vietnam or Pittsburgh or DC or Memphis or Vegas. Like, we usually go somewhere, but this year's like, all right, we got to keep it simple. And in that simplification, not until the pilot or 501 and 502, this was Justin and I's first scene together geographically in the same space. So we were really looking forward to being in the same space. I want to add in the tension that we have in terms of like how best to care for our aging mother, which is a very real thing that a lot of siblings go through as their parents get older, and the Pearsons are going through that too. And then the desire to engage. Like, I think Randall himself wasn't 100% comfortable in having the conversation. He's like, oh man, he's flying all the way out here. I guess we got to go there, right? And it's interesting. Props to Logan and Niles, who play the younger versions of us, because I think they really knocked it out of the park. It's not just these two alpha males who are vying for position as to who is the new man of the house. But it's also the fact that Randall is successful. He has a certain sort of facility when it comes to intellectual endeavors or what have you, that puts his brother a little off edge. But his brother is way cooler. He has much better people skills, right? And so in his own way, like, okay, I may not be better with him in terms of the books, but my ability to connect with people is such that I can up him in that way. But it wasn't just the upmanship, it was the comparisons to Carlton. It was, I know more rap music than you know and stuff. And so at this point, like, Randall, I think, has this acceptance of like, okay, this is my brother. I know he loves me. Because here's the thing too, Denton, I don't want to belabor it, but like, Kevin shows up for Randall. It's like a big rubber band. It's like I will piss you off to no end, and then I will tear up this note from school so that you don't feel as if mom has to sign it so you can wear your Jordans. Like, it's like, no big deal, dude, just relax. He will mock him, and then he will leave the opening of his play and run and catch him in the middle of his panic attack because they love each other, right? And so I think for Randall to say like, bro, you coming here and making a speech, I appreciate it, but I think it's something that you're doing to make yourself feel good. I have to point out to you too that there are ways in which I have felt not overtly attacked by you, but passively so, that you are a part of this thing that I've dealt with my whole life. And for his brother to be like, I see it. Like, to see it, like, I think that's all he was looking for. Like, it's not about a speech of absolvement, right? It's just like, I am sorry for the part that I played in making you uncomfortable in your own house, right? Because it's such a, and I've talked to a few different friends who are transracial adoptees who know that they're loved by their brothers and sisters, by their parents, and still have this sort of, I know, like, one of these things is not quite like the other. And you try to shake that as much as you can, but it's still painfully obvious. When the grandparents show up and they talk about the twins and Randall, and they don't include you in that group, like, people have a way of separating you, however you see yourself or not. It's not necessarily reinforced by the world at large. They remind you that you are different, right? And so for your brother to make you feel different, that's the part that is particularly hurtful. And when Kevin was able to say, like, I see that, I apologize for that. I mean, like, I couldn't help but weep. Like, I was just like, that's all I wanted, bro. That's all I wanted.
And I want to talk briefly about your partnership with Susan Kelechi Watson, because to me, she's so underrated. She doesn't get enough accolades from the industry. I mean, we need to see her name on some of those ballots for the final season, hopefully, at least.
Yes.
She's the rock that keeps Randall grounded, and she's so funny. I just love the shade that she like spills to just, keep him on his toes.
Yeah.
What is that partnership, and what has she meant to you over the last 5 years?
I love her. Oh man, thank you for saying that. Like, I honestly, I remember during season 3, I'll be perfectly honest, because that was a big season for the two of us in terms of our own marital issues or whatnot. I thought Sue, I was like, Sue, I think you're killing it. I think it's gonna happen. She said, really, SK? I was like, I don't want to overstep, but I don't know, I'm just saying. And it was the year of Game of Thrones. And I feel like a lot of voters just like, oh, it's Thrones last year. And I love Game of Thrones. I didn't love the last season. I'll say that to anybody. Michael Geyser's probably texting me like, please stop talking about Game of Thrones. No, but like the thunder got sort of usurped, and that was a really big season for Sue. So I'm hoping in season 6, knock on wood, same sort of thing can happen. She's a dear friend. We went to school together, a couple years above her from NYU. I've always been a big fan of her work, and then to finally have a chance to spend these past 5 years together as TV husband and TV wife. We had a moment, I want to say it was season 4, when we go back in time and we see Randall and Beth's nuptials. And we did like look at each other before we shot this scene, Denton. And the extra that was hired to play the preacher was a real preacher. And we said like these real vows to one another. And when I first saw her in her wedding dress, like I cried because she was beautiful. And then we kissed each other. And she said, SK, I think we just got married. I said, I have to go and tell my wife. I was like, right, I think I got married again. I don't want you to be mad at me, but like, it just kind of happened like that. We have an absolute blast, man. And she's so much fun to play with, but she's so honest in her portrayal of Beth. And there's a simplicity that just sort of like Randall and my portrayal of Randall, he can be someone who's just sort of like mile of minute and has so many things going into him. And she just has a way of just being like, all right, bro, like, let's just focus on one thing at a time, you know? And I think for Randall in particular, like the seeking out of this Black woman to be his life partner was a big thing for him. A lot of folks marry somebody like, you know, dear old mom. And dear old mom is friggin' awesome. But like in terms of trying to create something, a foundation, where he felt as if he belonged, where he saw children that looked like him, right, was such a huge thing. And I know a lot of times people, I remember in college, and I don't mean to be going off on these tangents, but like going to Stanford University and living in the African-American theme house there, folks would ask like, why do you go to a white university to live in a Black dorm? Well, I said, well, because it's a white university and you're trying to find the place where you belong inside of that place, right? And people are like, well, isn't that sort of bass backwards? We've been fighting for integration and whatnot. I was like, this is still integration, but you still like to know that there's a spot where you can go and exhale and know that like no one is looking at you as if like, why is this guy here? Why is he in this space? But everybody's like, yeah, this is your space. Like, come on here. I think Beth for Randall is like, come on, I'm here, you know?
Yeah, she's a safety net.
Yeah.
I need to get this in quickly. I want to talk about Lincoln Divided We Stand, because this might have been a more surprising nomination.
Sure.
The category does not get a lot of attention, but you're up against Sir Anthony Hopkins, Sigourney Weaver, and David Attenborough. So these are not slouches here.
Twice, Attenborough twice, yeah.
No, it's a fun slate of nominees. So how did you end up working on this Lincoln docuseries anyway?
They sent me the pitch deck, and it was really interesting. There's a big discourse going on in the world in terms of history, who gets to tell history, and how who tells the history shapes the way in which we experience the world, right? And I think so many of us, especially when I speak to Black friends, it's not until college really that you have a real understanding of African-American history and the role that it's played in shaping American history and how the two are necessarily intertwined. There is a bit of a dampening, if you will, from ages, from kindergarten to 12th grade, where you spend a month every year talking about like, this is what happened in terms of slavery or whatnot. Reconstruction is barely ever really talked about, but that 12 years is fucking crucial. 12 years in terms of how this country ultimately wound up going. And then you also hear about Lincoln. And I think a lot of our views of who Lincoln was and how he's portrayed have been overly simplistic, with Martin Luther King, with a lot of other important historical figures. And so as I was reading the pitch deck, I was sort of like, oh shit, this is interesting. Like I'm learning something as I'm reading this, like he was not just a pure abolitionist from the beginning. You know, he was a non-expansionist, meaning he didn't feel as if the institution should continue to grow. He was also someone who necessarily didn't believe that slaves should continue to live within the United States once they were free, right? Like Garvey used Lincoln language as in terms of trying to understand like why we needed to get back to Africa. And Lincoln, from an altruistic sort of perspective, was like, I just don't think it's gonna work out. Like, you should be free. You shouldn't be property, but I don't know if you should coexist, right? And it makes you think, like, if John Wilkes hadn't popped up, would we be here? Like, it's like so many different things could have gone. And so I think when something hits you on an intellectual level, and you get a chance to be the voice of something that has historically only been allowed for white voices to tell this story, I was like, no, this is our story. Lincoln's life is part of our story. And to have someone who is African-American to tell that, I think was an interesting take. But ultimately, if I wasn't sort of fascinated by the nuance of his life, and also still in awe of the man, like truly in awe of the man for the particular circumstances in which he was raised by his father, losing his mom, losing sisters, like losing wives, losing children, and having to find a way. When you read a Lincoln speech and the task that he had of trying to speak to a divided country, but putting rhetoric in that was appealing to both the North and the South, like it's Shakespeare on steroids at times, because I was like, what word do I emphasize here? I was like, this shit is like threading a needle. And he was threading a needle. So yeah, I was approached with it. I was fascinated by it. And I said, yes, that's the basic answer that I can give.
And then just one final thing, you've been bringing the drama for years now on This Is Us, but some recent news came out that you're going to be in a couple action films or action comedies for Amazon Studios. One with Randall Park that's in the works, and then Coyote Blue, which is from the same screenwriter as John Wick.
Yeah.
And obviously everyone knows you're in Black Panther. So what do you like about these action movies? Is it fun to just get away from the drama sometimes?
Sure. I mean, yeah, that's it. I grew up as an athlete, played football and basketball and track, a little ultimate frisbee. So using my body is fun. While I still have a body to use, bro. I'm 45 years old. You can see like the grays are starting to get in. I look like Black Kramer right now because I'm doing this movie. So this won't be Randall when the season starts, but I got to vary it up from time to time. It's fun to be physical. It's fun to, you know, as a kid, you play Army, you play cops and robbers and all that type of stuff. So to be able to do that on camera has always been something that I've looked forward to. I love making people laugh, man. I used to have this dream, and I know we're running out of time. I used to have this dream that I'd be on some late night talk show or something like that, or an award show, and I would make a joke, and everybody would be watching it. And then everybody would laugh at that joke at the same time. It'd be like a little vibration, like in the world. Like that's a thought that I've had since I've been a young man, and hopefully it'll finally come to fruition one day.
Well, we'll certainly be looking forward to those upcoming projects. And of course, season 6 of This Is Us coming up this fall on NBC. Sterling K. Brown, we are wishing you the best of luck on both of your Emmy nominations this upcoming award season. And to the viewers watching this interview, head over to goldderby.com or hop on the Gold Derby app, make your Emmy predictions, beat the experts, and check out more interviews with top awards contenders. Sterling, it was great chatting with you. And again, good luck.
Thanks a lot, Dan. I appreciate it. Take care, man.